Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to control everything around you, the more chaotic it seems to become? You plan, you overanalyze, you exhaust yourself running mental marathons. And yet, nothing really changes. In fact, it often feels like the more effort you put into fixing the unfixable, the heavier the weight on your shoulders becomes. Sound familiar? I bet it does. Because if you've lived long enough in this modern, fast-paced world, you felt that creeping frustration too. We live in a constant rush, don't we? Racing through our days like we're being chased by some invisible deadline. Always trying to be right, always trying to stay ahead, always attempting to control outcomes, conversations, people, situations, anything and everything. And here's the question. What if that's the very thing keeping us restless? What if the peace you're desperately searching for doesn't come from doing more, saying more, or proving yourself over and over again? What if, just what if, it comes from doing less, from saying less, from focusing not on the outer noise, but on the calm within? My friend, sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't in action, but in knowing when to stop. Now I get it. In today's world, you're constantly being told to hustle harder, to speak louder, to make your presence known. The pressure to stay visible, relevant, and ahead of the curve is relentless. Everywhere you look, there's a voice telling you to be more, to have more, to want more. But here's what the ancient Stoics knew. Something we've gradually forgotten as our lives grew louder and our minds busier. True peace doesn't live in that noise. It isn't hiding somewhere in your next achievement, your next argument won, or your next social media post. It exists in the quiet, in restraint, in clarity. The Stoics taught that when you stop reacting to every minor disturbance, when you stop trying to control what was never yours to control in the first place, something incredible happens. The chaos around you might remain, but inside you build a fortress, a calm, immovable center no storm can touch. And that, my friend, is where your strength lives. In this video, we're not just going to talk about it as a nice theory or ancient philosophy. I'm going to show you, practically, tangibly, how you can begin to think less, speak less, and focus more to radically transform your everyday life. Because this isn't about indifference. It's not about giving up or becoming passive. It's about choosing your battles wisely, about knowing when to hold on and when to let go, about being intentional with your time, your words, your energy, just like the wise Stoics who mastered the art of inner peace in a turbulent world. So, let me ask you, are you ready? Ready to shift not just your mindset, but your entire way of moving through the world? Are you prepared to step away from the noise and reclaim your calm? If so, let's dive in. And to set the stage, let me tell you a story. A story that illustrates the exact power of thinking less, talking less, and focusing more. It's the story of Marcos. Marcos was the kind of guy you probably know, or maybe, if you're honest, the kind of person you've been yourself. He needed to have control over everything, every little thing. From the moment he woke up in the morning, his mind was already spinning. Before his feet even hit the floor, he was checking his phone for work emails, half expecting some disaster to have unfolded overnight. It wasn't just about being prepared, it was about being in control. If someone took too long to reply to his messages, Marcos's thoughts would spiral like a tornado. Did something happen? Are they mad at me? Did I mess up? He couldn't stand the discomfort of not knowing. And it wasn't limited to his inbox. In conversations, He felt this unrelenting need to have an opinion on everything, to be the person with the right answer, to steer the direction of every discussion. It was exhausting, not just for him, but for everyone around him. Marcos lived like a man on the edge, overthinking every scenario, overtalking every situation, and pouring his energy into fixing problems that weren't even his to fix. And guess what? By the end of every single day, he was drained. Mentally, physically, emotionally. That persistent, nagging sense of nothing I do is ever enough haunted him like a shadow he couldn't shake. Until one ordinary afternoon, something snapped. It happened in the office, over something so trivial you'd laugh if it didn't carry such a big lesson. His colleague, Laura, made a decision without consulting him. It wasn't earth-shattering. It wasn't even particularly important. But for Marcos, it felt like a personal betrayal. How dare she? Why wouldn't she check with me first? This could go wrong. And so, without thinking, Marcos lashed out. He confronted Laura with the full force of his frustration over something completely insignificant. And Laura, cool, calm, and clearly fed up, hit him back with a single sentence that would stick to him like glue. Marcos, not everything revolves around you. You need to learn to let go. Those words, simple as they were, landed like a thunderclap. In that one moment, it was like the curtain was pulled back and Marcos saw himself, really saw himself, for the first time in years. The control freak, the compulsive overthinker, the guy who made himself and everyone else miserable trying to manage the unmanageable. That evening, Marcos went home and did something he hadn't done in ages. He stood alone in front of his bathroom mirror, stared into his own reflection, and whispered a truth he could no longer avoid. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I don't want to live like this. That was the beginning of his shift. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. No lightning bolt, no sudden overnight transformation. But it was real. And it was his. And here's the thing. It wasn't about Laura. It wasn't about that office argument. It wasn't about one bad day at work. It was about every single day leading up to that moment. The years of clinging too tightly, speaking too loudly, thinking too obsessively. It was about all the energy he had wasted on what he couldn't control. And finally, it was about deciding to stop. In the previous part, we saw Marcos finally realizing how the obsession with control was quietly ruining him. And more importantly, we witnessed the moment he decided to stop. That's when everything began to change. The truth is, Marcos had been through plenty of moments like that before. Those exhausted, frustrated times where he swore things would be different, only to find himself right back in the same old patterns. But this time, something inside him truly shifted. It felt like a mental switch had been flipped. The next morning, as he opened his eyes, he knew it in his bones. The old version of himself ended yesterday. And so he started small. Tiny steps. That might seem trivial to anyone else, but for Marcos, they were monumental. He stopped reaching for his phone every 5 minutes, just in case someone needed something. When messages came in, he no longer rushed to reply, desperate to have the last word. For the first time in years, Marcos let go of the need to control every tiny detail of his life. He finally admitted to himself that this obsession was eating away at his peace and damaging the relationships around him. And when he let go, do you know what happened? Something completely unexpected. The thing Marcos feared most. that if he didn't hold everything together, the world would fall apart. Never happened. The world kept spinning. Nobody stopped talking to him. Nothing exploded into chaos. In fact, what surprised him even more was that people began to smile at him more often. They noticed him. They paid attention to him in ways they never had before. At work, things flowed better than they ever did. It was as if the air around him had grown lighter, as if everyone was silently relieved to no longer be pulled into the invisible tug-of-war Marcos used to create. When his partner seemed distant, instead of firing off 1,000 anxious questions or imagining the worst-case scenarios, he stayed still. He observed. He was simply present with her, without trying to fix or control anyone's feelings. And when life didn't go according to plan, as it so often does, instead of spiraling into panic, he took a breath. He asked himself a few clear questions. Then, he chose which battles were truly worth fighting and which ones deserved nothing more than a shrug. Little by little, it all became crystal clear to Marcos. The sense of control he had chased for so long out there, in the world around him, could only ever be built from within. Think less, speak less, focus more. That's where peace lives. That's where real power begins. And the incredible thing? This wisdom, which Marcos was only now beginning to grasp, had been known by the Stoic philosophers centuries ago. These ancient masters had perfected the art of ignoring empty noise, staying silent when nothing meaningful needed to be said, and channeling every drop of their energy into the things they could genuinely control. Today, you and I are going to learn from them, because the lessons that changed Marcos's life don't belong to him alone. They're here for you too, if you're willing to pay attention. And hey, if this story so far is helping you see things a little clearer, consider subscribing to the channel and becoming a part of this growing community. You might even leave a comment down below and tell us, which part of your life will you start quietly rebuilding with focus, just for yourself? Or maybe keep it simple and type, "Today I am a Stoic. I begin mastering my mind and my life." That single sentence will be your quiet promise, a silent declaration that from today forward, your actions will echo louder than your words. Because just like Marcos, you have the power to take back control from within. And the very first thing the Stoics would remind you is this: not everything deserves a response. One of the biggest daily drains on our energy comes from feeling the need to react to every single thing. A poorly worded comment, a sarcastic remark, a piece of criticism disguised as friendly advice. And there we go, raising our mental fists, ready to defend ourselves, explain, justify, strike back. But you know what we so often fail to notice in that split second? That reacting to everything means handing over control of our inner state to someone else. It's like giving away the keys to your peace. We get caught in this invisible, exhausting pressure, as though every word thrown our way demands an immediate reply, as if silence itself were a sign of weakness. But it isn't. You don't owe every comment, every dig, every half-baked opinion a reaction. In fact, silence is often the most powerful move you can make. True weakness lives in blind, automatic reactions, in letting every little external trigger decide how you feel, what you think, and how you act. And you already know, those who truly master their lives never act because they're pushed. They act because they choose. Previously, we uncovered a powerful truth. Not everything deserves your attention, your words, or your reaction. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent, hold your ground, and protect your peace. Now let's take that wisdom one step deeper. Epictetus, One of the greatest Stoic philosophers understood this with brutal, unshakable clarity. He once said, "If someone speaks ill of you and it's true, correct yourself. If it's false, laugh." At first glance, it might seem like a simple, even dismissive line, but look closer. That one sentence holds within it incredible, almost untouchable freedom. It's a reminder that you're not responsible for what others say or think about you. You're only responsible for how you choose to live, how you respond, and what you decide to carry with you. And when you realize that, truly deeply realize it, something inside you changes. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. You let go of the exhausting need to defend yourself against every careless word, every misjudged comment, every false assumption. Imagine the relief, the energy you could save, the peace you'd feel when you no longer felt obligated to react to every little thing. In a world where everyone seems addicted to opinions, where every statement demands a reaction and every glance expects an explanation, choosing to stay silent becomes an act of quiet rebellion. It's not indifference. It's not weakness. It's focus. It's restraint. It's strength, carefully held in check. And most of all, it's mastery over yourself. Here's something most people never learn. Stop walking into battles you never chose. Not every insult needs your time. Not every criticism deserves your energy. Not every irritation is worthy of your focus. Sometimes, silence is your best weapon. It's how you quietly set boundaries, protect your inner calm, and guard the life you're building from the noise of the world. The psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl once wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, the tiny gap between what happens and how you react, is pure gold." But do you know what most of us do? We fill it with noise, with knee-jerk reactions, half-formed words, emotions we haven't even named yet. And every time we react without choosing, we lose a little more of ourselves, a little more strength, a little more focus. But when you start holding your tongue, when you pause, when you let that gap between stimulus and response grow, something beautiful happens. Your mind starts to settle, your shoulders drop, your heart rate slows, and most importantly, your energy comes back to you. You're no longer bleeding it out on things that don't deserve it. That's when you start thinking less, because you've finally escaped those endless, useless mental spirals. That's when you speak less, because you've realized not every word needs to be said. And that's when you focus more, because you've decided that only the things that truly matter are worthy of your precious attention. And if you're wondering how to make this shift for real, start with something small. Next time someone says something that stings or makes you uncomfortable, don't react. Don't answer. Don't even think about your response. Instead, just breathe. That breath, that tiny pause, is where your power lives. Then, when you feel the old urge to explain yourself or justify your actions rising in your throat, ask yourself, do I really need to say this? Or am I just protecting my ego? And if it's the ego talking, stay silent. It won't lead you anywhere worth going. Finally, start practicing the simple, underrated art of letting things go. Not everything that hurts needs to be fixed. Not every discomfort needs to be dissected. Not every offense matters. Sometimes the wisest, most stoic thing you can do is let it pass through you, like a cloud in the sky or a breeze through an open window. Let it float by. No response, no reaction, no shape. Because not everything deserves a response, but you, my friend, you deserve peace, a clear mind, focused energy, and all of that begins the moment you learn to be quiet, to stop stepping into battles that aren't yours and start building strength from within. That's how you begin to think less, talk less, and live far more focused on what actually matters. And next, we'll talk about a truth most people never realize. Your energy is not infinite. Earlier, we talked about the power of protecting your peace by not reacting to everything, by choosing your battles carefully, and by letting go of what doesn't matter. But there's another truth you need to hear, one that affects every single day of your life, whether you realize it or not. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You wake up in the morning as if you've got endless energy to give. You jump into your day replying to every message, answering every call, checking every notification, scrolling through social media, keeping a dozen conversations alive, explaining yourself when no explanation is needed, absorbing other people's moods and emotions, all while expecting yourself to stay sharp, productive, and at your best. But here's the thing. You can't do it all. Not because you're weak, not because you're flawed, but because you're human. And as a human being, your energy is limited. It's not an infinite resource you can pour out endlessly without consequence. If you keep giving it away to every little thing and every person demanding a piece of you, one day you'll look up and realize you're running on empty, right when you need it the most. Picture this. Each morning, you wake up holding a glass full of water. That water represents your attention, your focus, your emotional stamina, your mental strength, your life force. And as you move through the day, you spill tiny drops here and there. Every time you overthink something trivial, drip. Every time you argue just to protect your pride, another drip. Every time you take on a problem that wasn't yours to fix in the first place, another little spill. And without even noticing, your glass gets lighter and lighter. The worst part is, you don't realize how much you've lost until you reach for it in a crucial moment, when you need to be fully present, think clearly, make an important decision, or simply sit in peace. And by then, it's gone. You're exhausted, drained, mentally foggy. Not because you lacked strength or discipline, but because you gave your energy away to things that didn't deserve it. This isn't just some poetic metaphor. It's backed by science. Psychologist and Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman explained this phenomenon as ego depletion. It's the idea that your brain has a finite amount of conscious effort it can give each day. The more decisions you make, the more you control, the more you react to things, the faster your mental resources get used up. The outcome? You get impatient, you make poor choices, and your emotional state grows fragile. It's not that you aren't capable of handling more. It's that you already spent everything you had on things that didn't truly matter. And that's the trap so many of us fall into daily. The ancient Stoics understood this long before modern science confirmed it. They trained themselves to stop wasting precious energy on the meaningless, the trivial, the things outside their control. They knew a fulfilling, powerful life isn't built on endless effort, but on direction, on intention. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca said centuries ago, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. If you spend your entire day tangled in every thought, reacting to every comment, and overanalyzing every moment, how can you possibly have anything left for the things that truly matter? Think about it. How can you build a meaningful, peaceful, focused life if you're constantly chasing distractions? So let me remind you one more time because it's important. You're human. not a machine, not a robot with an endless battery, pack strapped to your back. And when you finally learn to guard your energy, everything about your life starts to shift. Not because you do less, but because you begin to choose better. You start talking less because you realize you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You think less because you stop getting tangled in useless thoughts and overanalyzing things that won't matter a week from now. And slowly, you reclaim the strength, focus, and peace that were always meant to be yours. Next, we'll explore exactly how to guard that limited energy and make it last for what really matters. As we just reminded ourselves, your energy isn't infinite. But when you stop wasting it on things that don't deserve it, you begin to realize you have more than enough for what truly matters. And here's where the shift happens. When you no longer give your attention to the noise, you naturally start to focus more on what actually counts. See, misused energy doesn't just disappear, it turns into something else. Anxiety, stress, tension you carry around without even knowing it. But when you learn to direct your energy wisely, it transforms. It becomes clarity. It becomes raw, unstoppable power. And it all starts with small, deliberate choices. Starting today, practice this. When someone sends you a message expecting you to drop everything and reply instantly, pause for a moment. Remember, your attention is precious, far more valuable than someone else's impatience. You're not obligated to respond the moment a notification pops up. Answer when it makes sense for you, when you're in the right headspace, not simply because the world demands it. And when you catch yourself spiraling in a mental loop, obsessing over a problem you can't fix right now, remind yourself, not everything requires your immediate attention. Some problems aren't puzzles you can solve in a single sitting. Some things need space. They need time. Obsession doesn't fix them. It only drains you. And when someone comes to you carrying their drama, unloading their emotions, and you feel that familiar urge to carry their weight on your shoulders, ask yourself a simple question. Is this really mine to hold? Can you be a compassionate friend, a good listener, without absorbing the storm they're carrying? Yes, you can. You can be fully present for someone without emptying yourself in the process. And if it feels like too much, in that moment, it's okay to say so. You can gently reply, "I'm sorry. Can we talk about this later? Would that be all right?" It's not rude. It's not selfish. It's survival. It's how you protect the energy you need to live your own life well. Because while your energy isn't infinite, if you stop wasting it on the endless noise and unimportant demands, you'll discover you actually have plenty. And with what remains, you can build something remarkable. Clarity, focus, a sense of presence you may not have felt in years. It's exactly how the Stoics lived. No waste, no distraction. Every thought, every word, every action done with intention. Not scattered, not impulsive, but chosen. And speaking of thoughts, here's another truth you need to remember. Your mind lies to you. Yes, it does. More often than you think. Do you remember a time when you waited anxiously for a message, a call, a sign, anything to let you know that things were okay? And when it didn't come, your mind went wild. They must be angry with me. I must have messed up. I ruined everything. They're ignoring me again. And the strangest part? You didn't just think those things. You felt them. The anxiety settled in your stomach. Your heart raced. Your mind painted entire terrible scenes. And your body lived through the storm as if it were real. Hours later, the message finally arrived, and everything was perfectly normal. But by then you had already suffered through a disaster you created in your own head. That's the trap. Your mind doesn't always tell the truth. In fact, it often lies. And not because it's cruel, but because it was built not to make you happy, but to keep you safe. And sometimes, in its desperate attempt to protect you, it invents threats. Rejection, betrayal, and problems that don't even exist outside of your own thoughts. Psychologist and author Ethan Kross explains this perfectly. He teaches that negative self-talk, that constant, quiet mental whisper, can easily turn into your worst enemy if you don't learn how to handle it. Even a small, unresolved worry can trigger a chain of irrational thoughts, spiraling into anxiety, clouding your judgment, damaging your health, and wrecking your peace of mind. You see the problem, don't you? The issue isn't that you have thoughts, it's that you don't filter them. And this is where the Stoics were masters. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it so simply, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Remember what we just talked about. It's not the situation itself that breaks you, but the story your mind tells about it. The narrative you build inside your head has far more power over your peace than any external event ever could. It's not what happens to us that truly upsets us. It's what we think about what happens. It's not reality that crushes you. It's the automatic story you start spinning around it. That inner voice, that mental script you've probably been following for years without ever stopping to question if it's even true. And here's the danger. That unchallenged story doesn't just stay in your head. It ends up guiding how you feel, how you act, and how you connect with the people around you. If you don't learn to separate what actually happened from what your mind says happened, you'll end up living your life as if every single thought that crosses your mind is absolute truth. But let's be honest, it's not. That's why thinking less doesn't mean thinking worse. It means cutting out the mental noise that serves no purpose. The kind of overthinking that leads you down, dead ends. And believe it or not, speaking less can be a mark of wisdom too. How many times in your life have you said something you wished you could take back? Words fueled by an imaginary urgency your mind invented in the heat of the moment. A message you sent, a comment you made, an argument you escalated, all because your brain convinced you it was urgent when it really wasn't. What you truly need isn't a louder mind, it's a clearer one. And the good news? That's something you can train. It takes practice, but it's entirely possible. When a negative thought arrives, a harsh judgment, a lingering doubt, an unnecessary fear, don't accept it at face value. Don't treat it as fact. Instead, pause. Watch it for a second like a cloud passing by. Ask yourself, is this real? Or is it just noise? Does this thought build me up or break me down? Am I actually experiencing this right now, or am I imagining it? And here's the key. Don't react on impulse. Don't immediately obey whatever your mind shouts at you. In that tiny space between thought and action, that's where your freedom lives. That's the moment where you regain control, where you choose clarity over chaos. For example, when you catch yourself thinking, they didn't reply because they're mad at me. What if you stopped and asked instead, or maybe they're just busy? Notice how instantly your entire perspective softens. There's no storm, no imaginary crisis, just logic, calm, and peace. Because the truth is, Stoics weren't cold, detached people like some imagine. They weren't emotionless, they were wise. They understood that if you want to live peacefully, you have to master your own mind first. You have to know when to believe a thought and when to let it pass. And you can absolutely do the same. The next time your mind tells you, you're not good enough. Everything's falling apart. It's hopeless. Don't chase it. Don't fight with it. Stay still. Take a slow breath. And calmly say to yourself, I'm not always going to believe you. Because from today on, you decide. You choose what thoughts get to stay, what words you'll speak, and where you'll focus your precious, limited energy. And now, onto another important truth. You don't need to be right all the time. I know it stings a little, doesn't it? Because if we're honest, we all love being right. We crave having the final word, winning the argument, proving we knew better, showing that someone else was wrong and we were right all along. But what we often don't realize is the invisible price we pay for that obsession. It damages our relationships. It turns meaningful conversations into pointless battles. It wastes our time. And worse, it traps our minds in defensive, stubborn patterns that go nowhere. There's a lesser-known story about Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoics and the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. During a Senate meeting, one of his advisors boldly interrupted him and corrected him in public. You can imagine the tension in that room. Everyone held their breath, expecting an outburst or at least a sharp retort. After all, he was the emperor. But Marcus Aurelius didn't even flinch. He looked at the man and said calmly, "You're right, and if I had known that earlier, I wouldn't have said otherwise." Then he simply moved on with the meeting, as if nothing had happened. No wounded pride. No need to dominate. No drama. Isn't that incredible? That's not weakness. It's strength. That's wisdom. That's humility. Now imagine doing the same today. Picture yourself in a heated argument with your partner, in a tense work meeting, or at a family dinner where tempers flare. Deep down, you start to realize the argument is going nowhere. You even suspect you might be wrong. But your ego whispers, it's too late to back down now. How would your life change if you could pause, swallow your pride, and simply say, you know what? You might be right. We just saw how Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, could set aside his pride and embrace correction. Not because he was weak, but because he valued peace of mind far more than the fleeting satisfaction of being right. Now, let's go a little deeper into why that matters so much for us too. Sure, in the heat of the moment, it might feel like backing down means losing face, like you're admitting defeat or lowering yourself beneath the other person. Sound familiar? But think again about Marcus Aurelius. This was a man who held the power of life and death over everyone around him. He could have silenced any dissent with a single word. Yet, when someone corrected him, he didn't retaliate, he appreciated it. Why? Because he understood a timeless truth. Peace and clarity were worth far more than the temporary victory of being right. You see, being right won't give you peace. It might give you a momentary rush, maybe a smug sense of satisfaction, but it won't calm your heart. What truly gives you peace is knowing deep down that you have nothing to prove to anyone, that your worth isn't tied to being right or winning every argument. Epictetus said it perfectly. It is better to conquer yourself than to win 1,000 arguments. And he wasn't wrong. Ask yourself, what's the point of winning an argument if it leaves you feeling tense, agitated, or emotionally drained? What good is convincing someone else if in the process, your own mind turns into a chaotic battlefield, your heart racing, your thoughts scattered? The truth is, your mind only begins to settle when you let go of this exhausting need to constantly prove something. And when that happens, something beautiful follows. you start talking less. Not out of fear, but because you realize that conversation isn't about convincing people to see the world exactly as you do. It's about understanding, about learning, about connection. And when you stop wasting your precious mental energy on winning pointless debates, you find yourself able to focus. Really focus on what matters, on where you're going, on who you want to be. You don't need to be right. What you need is direction, clarity, peace. Instead of insisting that your perspective is the only one that counts, try observing. Instead of endlessly explaining yourself, ask questions. Instead of rushing to correct others, correct the impulse within yourself to always come out on top. Because the moment you stop fighting to be right is the moment you become truly free. You stop reacting automatically. You stop draining your energy. You stop relying on anyone's approval to feel okay. So, next time you find yourself caught in a tense conversation, in the middle of a debate that's starting to heat up, pause and ask yourself honestly, am I speaking right now to build something meaningful, or am I just trying to win? And if you realize it's the second, step back. Take a deep breath. Listen more than you speak. Let go of the urge to impose your truth, because here's the thing. More often than not, the one who chooses silence in a storm isn't losing. They're simply choosing a different kind of victory. A quieter, wiser one. Marcus Aurelius, with the whole world in the palm of his hand, knew how to do it. And so can you. Even with the limited power you hold in your daily life, you can choose peace over pride, because you weren't born to be right every time. You were born to be at peace, to think clearly, to focus your energy on what truly matters and leave the rest behind. And now, here's the next lesson. One that would have saved me countless hours of regret had I understood it sooner. Learn to respond instead of reacting. That's it. Simple in theory, life-changing in practice. Breathe. Don't answer right away. That's the advice I wish I could travel back in time and give to my younger self. To all those moments where, in a flash of anger or frustration, I reacted on impulse and wrecked something important. A relationship, a meaningful conversation, an entire day's peace. And for what? Because I couldn't pause for one breath. Yes, I'll be honest with you. For years I was trapped in reaction mode. If someone made a snide comment, I snapped. If a situation didn't go my way, I blew up. I'd blurt out the first thing that crossed my mind, and then spend hours, sometimes days, regretting what I said, wishing I could undo it. My intentions were good, but I was living like a scared animal, constantly in survival mode. Always on edge, always defensive. Until one day I stumbled across a quote by Seneca that hit me like lightning. The greatest freedom is self-mastery. And just like that, it felt as if someone had held up a mirror to my face. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't free. At all. I was a prisoner to every little stimulus, every careless word, every fleeting emotion. That was when I finally began to grasp what the Stoics had been trying to teach all along. That between what happens to you and what you do about it, there's a space. And inside that space lies your greatest power. In that moment, you can choose to destroy or to rebuild. You can hurt or you can heal. You can sink or you can rise. And let me repeat this, because it's so simple, yet so powerful it could change your life if you let it. Don't react. Respond. So like we just talked about, learning to respond instead of reacting can completely shift the way you experience life. It puts you back in control of your emotions and your peace of mind. And here's the truth most people don't realize. That's the difference between being dragged through life by every little thing and actually living with intention. Reacting is like handing over the remote control of your emotions to whoever happens to cross your path. Someone says something irritating. Click. Anger. Someone ignores you. Bam. Sadness. A small comment, a careless look, a random situation, and suddenly, your mood's flipped upside down. You react without a filter, without a pause, without even realizing what's happening. And before you know it, you're being yanked from one emotion to the next, as if you have no say in the matter. But responding is something else entirely. Responding means you hold the remote. You decide when to switch channels. It's hearing something and giving yourself just half a second more. Not a minute, not an hour, just half a second. And in that tiny, precious sliver of space, something incredible happens. In that gap, everything that matters fits. Your calm, your wisdom, your bigger picture. Imagine, if you will, you're an archer. Reacting is like grabbing the bow and immediately firing the arrow before you've even taken aim. It might hit something, but it probably won't be what you intended. Responding, though, that's you pausing for a breath, lining up the shot, steadying your hand, and only letting the arrow fly when you know it's right. The difference isn't in the arrow itself, it's in the control behind it. And Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor we've talked about, captured this perfectly. He said, "The best answer to anger is silence. Not because silence is weakness, not because it means surrendering, but because silence is a choice." And the person who controls their reaction, they don't just control that moment, they control their destiny. Think about that for a second. The outcome of your life is often determined not by what happens to you, but by how you respond. Now, I get it. This isn't something you master overnight. It takes practice. I struggled too. I remember one day, years ago, I had an argument with someone I deeply cared about. And instead of pausing, instead of thinking, I reacted. I fired off words without even realizing what I was saying. Words I didn't fully mean. Words that left scars. And the worst part? I did it because I couldn't hold back the impulse. If I had just taken a moment, counted to 3, taken a slow breath, allowed even a heartbeat's worth of space, that conversation, that relationship might have turned out differently. It was a harsh lesson, but one I needed. You see, Stoicism isn't some kind of magic trick. It won't erase your emotions, and it's not about pretending you don't feel things. It's about learning how to manage those emotions, how to know when to speak, when to stay quiet, and how to act in a way you won't regret later. And trust me, that changes everything. It changed my life. Not by making me perfect, but by making me free. Free from being a prisoner of my impulses. Free from living on autopilot, reacting to every trigger. And you can have that too. If you're ready to start, remember this simple rule. Every time you feel the urge to react, pause, breathe, observe, and ask yourself one question. Is what I'm about to say or do going to build something meaningful, or am I just unloading my frustration? And if it's the second, don't speak. Seriously, don't sabotage your peace for 5 fleeting seconds of pride. It's not worth it. Give yourself that small space. Think less, talk less, focus more, and start right here, right now. Don't let your impulses steer the ship. You take the wheel, and now, let's be honest. What's that one moment you wish you could take back? That time you reacted without thinking, and it left you with regret? We all have one. Share it in the comments. Make your commitment today. Write it out. From today on, I breathe before I respond. Because you weren't meant to live like a firecracker, exploding at every spark. You were meant to build from calm. All right, let's move on. Lesson number 6. Stop explaining so much. Show more. Have you noticed how often you feel this intense need to explain every little thing you do? Why you made that decision? Why you said no? Why you've been quieter lately? Why you chose a path that wasn't what others expected of you? It's like the moment you take a step for yourself, a voice inside starts demanding that you justify it. The strangest part? That pressure doesn't even come from other people. It comes from within, from an internal insecurity that whispers, you need permission to live on your own terms. And here's the ironic twist. The more you explain yourself, the further you drift from who you really are. The more distracted you become, the more energy you waste trying to win approval you never needed in the first place. And as we just talked about, the more you feel the need to explain yourself, the more you end up drifting away from your own focus. It pulls you out of alignment with what truly matters to you. Before you realize it, you stop moving toward your own goals and start wasting energy justifying why you aren't living according to other people's expectations. Modern psychology understands this clearly. In The Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown wrote something powerful. Nothing silences a person more than having to constantly justify what they feel. And isn't that true? The more you find yourself going in circles, explaining and over-explaining your choices to people who might not even care, the more doubt you create, not just in their minds, but in your own. And here's the thing. The Stoics figured this out centuries ago. Not as some philosophical theory written in dusty books, but as something they lived out every single day. They didn't waste time crafting long speeches to convince the world. They didn't ask for permission to be themselves. They lived with such quiet coherence that their actions became their argument. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. He was the emperor of Rome, holding unimaginable power, and yet you didn't see him running around trying to justify every single decision to the Senate, to the citizens, or to anyone else. His life, the way he carried himself, his calm presence, his steady leadership, his quiet compassion, spoke louder than any public address ever could. And honestly, that's the key right there. Your strength, your authenticity, it isn't in what you say when everyone's watching or clapping. It's in what you do when no one's around. It's in those moments of quiet action that don't need a spotlight. Think of it like this. Imagine there's a door in your house that squeaks every time you open it. You don't stand there telling people, hey, I'm going to fix that tomorrow. You don't make a speech about your plan to buy oil for the hinge. You just quietly fix it. And the next time someone opens that door, silence. No squeak, no announcement. Just the result. That's impact. That's presence. Not in the noise, but in the silent, deliberate action that changes things. And here's what's beautiful about living through action instead of explanation. It doesn't just save your energy. It gives you back your inner authority. It clears your head. You feel more grounded, steady, and unbothered. You're no longer tied up in what others want to hear from you. You're present in what you know needs to be done. You don't have to explain every move you make. It's far more powerful to take a step so solid, so intentional, that it explains itself without words. Your consistency, your way of showing up, the way you quietly stay true to yourself without needing to justify it, that's what convinces people. That's what earns real respect. So try it. Let your decisions speak before you do. Act with clarity. not with the anxious need to be understood. And when that familiar urge to explain yourself pops up, don't fight it, but notice it. Observe it like a cloud drifting by. Ask yourself, do I really need to explain this? Or am I just trying to reassure myself because I'm afraid of standing alone with my choice? You don't need to convince anyone. What you do day in and day out, your presence, your actions, your direction, those are more eloquent than any speech you could give. As the Stoics would remind us, do it. And if it's right, no explanation will be necessary. And that brings us to lesson number 7. Do less, but do it better. See, somewhere along the way, society sold us a lie. They made you believe that the more you cram into your day, the more you're worth. That if your schedule's packed and your to-do list is never ending, you must be productive. That if you're always busy, you're moving forward. But here's the reality. And it's both a little uncomfortable and incredibly liberating. You weren't made to do more. You were made to do what matters. And the sooner you realize that, the lighter your days will feel. Now take a moment, look at your day. Look at your week. How much of what you're doing actually matters? How much of it moves you closer to who you want to be? Because being busy isn't the same as being fulfilled. And deep down, you already know that. And as we just saw, doing less but doing it better isn't about giving up. It's about reclaiming your clarity and your direction. Now, let's take that one step further. Ask yourself honestly, how many things in your daily life are you doing just out of sheer habit? How many tasks do you say yes to because you don't want to disappoint others? Or because you're afraid you might miss out on something? Or worse, because you've simply forgotten how to stop? And here comes the toughest question of them all. How many of those things are actually bringing you any closer to the life you truly want to build for yourself? Greg McKeown, the author of Essentialism, puts it in brutally simple terms. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And isn't that what happens every time you fill your schedule to the brim? You say yes to every request, accept every invitation, cram your calendar with endless commitments, and convince yourself that you can juggle it all without consequence. But at the end of the day, you're left exhausted, drained, and scattered. And here's the truth. Doing less doesn't mean you're lazy. It isn't about giving up, and it's certainly not a weakness. It's about sharpening your focus. It's about pausing for a moment, looking at everything on your plate, and asking yourself a simple but crucial question. Does this add value to my life, or is it just filling space? The Stoics understood this long before productivity hacks and time management apps became trendy. To them, doing a lot wasn't a badge of honor. Acting with intention, that was wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest emperors in history, asked himself daily whether what he was doing was truly necessary. Imagine that. The ruler of an empire, taking the time to reflect on whether each action held real meaning. That's the lesson. Don't fill your schedule if your soul remains empty. Seneca, too, made it crystal clear. A full life isn't the one cluttered with countless activities. It's the one focused on what's essential. In his letters, he wrote that being busy isn't the same as being useful. It's not about doing for the sake of doing. It's about deliberately choosing what matters and letting go of the rest. Fewer actions, but done with care. Fewer words, but spoken with honesty. Fewer decisions, but solid, unwavering ones. One simple technique that can help, and is often used by top productivity experts, is Greg McKeown's 90% rule. Before saying yes to anything, ask yourself, is this a 90 out of 100 in importance for me? If it's not, it's a no. Because here's a fact. If everything feels important, then in reality, nothing is. When you start applying this filter, you'll notice the shift almost immediately. Your mind begins to clear. Your body feels lighter. Your focus sharpens. You stop being pulled in every direction and start standing exactly where you need to. You're no longer doing things just to look busy or to tick boxes off a list. You're acting with purpose because you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. No more running around, cramming your days with noise and distraction as if that somehow makes you more valuable. No, do less, but do it with your full presence, with your full attention, and with your full heart. Because one single action done with clarity and intention is worth more than 100 rushed, half-hearted attempts. And when you start living like this, you'll feel it. The anxiety starts to fade. The constant exhaustion begins to lift. The noise quiets down. And in its place, you'll find more clarity, more direction, and a deeper sense of impact. You don't need to fill your life to feel fulfilled. You need to fine-tune it. You don't need more speed. You need more presence. The greatest power move you can make is choosing what not to waste a single second on. Because sometimes, and the Stoics knew this well, you have to do less in order to live so much better. And that brings us to the next crucial lesson. Your attention is your most valuable resource. It's not your time. It's not your money. It's not your talent. It's where you place your attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your life quietly follows. In the last part, we talked about how your attention isn't just valuable. It's the foundation of your life's direction. And now, it's time to look closer at how easily and how often we let that attention slip away without even realizing it. Have you ever paused, even for a second, to consider what you're mentally consuming throughout the day? Your phone buzzes, and, without thinking, your fingers are already scrolling. A pointless conversation pulls you in before you notice what's happening. A single negative thought grabs hold of your mind and refuses to let go. One tiny notification can shatter your peace like a rock through glass. And the wild part is, you don't even notice it happening. But what you're spending in those moments isn't just time. It's not just energy. It's your focus. The single most valuable thing you have. Picture it like this. Your attention is a flashlight in a pitch-black room. That narrow beam of light has the power to illuminate what lifts you up or expose what drags you down. It can reveal the things that help you grow or highlight the things slowly draining you, piece by piece. And every time you carelessly point that beam without thought, you're shining it on distractions, on noise, while leaving the parts of your life that truly need clarity hidden in the dark. The crazy thing is, this scattered state has become so normal that you barely recognize it anymore. Jumping from one thought to the next, bouncing between tabs on your screen and tabs in your mind, you live with a dozen mental windows open at once, and none of them fully loaded. But here's the truth. Distraction isn't productivity. It's exhaustion dressed up as activity. And you weren't born to be drained. You were meant to direct, to choose where that precious beam of attention lands. Modern psychology is crystal clear about this. Focused attention doesn't just improve your productivity. It sharpens your memory, sparks creativity, boosts your performance, and even lifts your mood. The issue isn't that you don't have enough time. It's that you're consuming everything, reacting to everything, without any filter. And with each unchecked distraction, your most valuable resource slips quietly through your fingers. The Stoics understood this principle better than most people realize. While they didn't use the word attention the way we do today, they constantly, spoke about mastering the mind, about guarding the soul from being wasted on things that don't truly matter. Seneca, in particular, put it perfectly when he said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And isn't that exactly what happens when you stretch yourself thin, showing up for everything and everyone, while leaving no space to show up for yourself? Your attention should be treated as sacred. Every moment of focus you give is like an investment. And like any investment, it should go where it truly counts. If you're aiming to move forward, to grow, to live a life that feels purposeful instead of chaotic, then it's time to guard your attention the same way you would guard a rare and priceless treasure. Because in truth, that's exactly what it is. This isn't about running away from the world or locking yourself in some quiet bubble. It's about learning how to consciously choose where, in this noisy world, you want to be truly present. And you can start small. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Begin by choosing your mental battles. Not every passing thought deserves a full debate. Not every piece of news deserves your outrage. Not every random comment deserves to be heard or engaged with. Think of your attention like a bank account. And every thought, every distraction, every piece of information you allow in is a transfer of your mental wealth. So ask yourself, who's getting your balance? Where are you investing your energy? Are you growing richer in peace and clarity, or are you quietly going broke, one distraction at a time? It's time to change the way you manage this precious asset. Start closing those mental tabs that lead nowhere. Shut down those inner loops that only leave you stuck, circling the same old worries. And focus instead on the thoughts, conversations, and actions that have the power to move you forward, to lift you up, and to bring you closer to becoming the person you've always known you could be. Because at the end of the day, the problem isn't that you can't focus. It's not a lack of discipline, and it's not your environment. It's that you haven't made the conscious decision about where your attention should land. And until you do, life will keep dragging you from one distraction to the next. What's really missing isn't time. It's you in the driver's seat. So before we move on, I want you to carry this one simple phrase with you. Repeat it until it sinks in, until it becomes second nature. My attention is mine, and I don't give it away to just anyone. We just talked about how your attention is the most valuable thing you have, and how you need to guard it like you'd guard something you deeply love. Now let's take it one step further. Let me ask you this. Have you really stopped to notice where your energy is going even when you don't realize it? What are you giving your precious mental space to without meaning to? I want you to think about it for a moment. And when you're ready, drop it in the comments. Make it your personal commitment right here, right now. Say it out loud if you need to. Today, I start protecting my attention like I protect what I love. Because here's the undeniable truth. Wherever you place your focus, that's exactly where your life will begin to grow. Now, number 9. Stop chasing what doesn't depend on you. Let's be honest for a second. How hard is it for you to let go of the things you simply can't control? Not just what you say you've let go of, but what your actions reveal. Because if you're constantly checking to see if someone's changed, waiting for them to text you back, hoping they'll notice your effort, silently begging for their approval, you're wearing yourself down over things that aren't yours to carry. And while you're doing that, what's happening? Your mind drifts, your focus slips away, your muscles tense up, and your energy starts draining like water through cupped hands. All because you're trying to hold on to what was never yours, to hold in the first place. And that's a battle you'll never win. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, someone very close to me lived in that exhausting, invisible trap. Her name was Claudia. She was one of those people who would give everything she had for others, for her family, her job, her friends, her partner, always available, always attentive, always chasing the hope that if she could keep everything in perfect balance, everything and everyone around her would stay happy. But in Claudia's world, right meant making sure everyone else was satisfied with her. And as you probably guessed, that never truly happened. If someone distanced themselves, she'd replay every conversation in her head, wondering what she said wrong. If a coworker didn't compliment her efforts, she'd work even harder. If a friend went quiet, she'd chase after them, sending messages, trying to fix what she didn't even break. Sounds like a beautiful person, right? And she truly is. But there was one huge problem. Claudia lived in a state of constant tension, like she was walking a tightrope over a world she had no control over. Her peace wasn't hers. It was tied to outcomes she couldn't predict, and to people she couldn't manage. And then came the moment everything shifted. One day, after a draining argument with a relative, Claudia did what she always did. She apologized for something that wasn't even her fault. She left that conversation exhausted, hurt, and emotionally spent. She climbed into her car, turned off the radio, left her phone untouched, and sat there in complete silence. And in that stillness, a question finally surfaced. What am I trying to achieve? Why am I chasing things I can't control? That simple, quiet moment marked the beginning of her turning point. It didn't change overnight. It wasn't some dramatic movie moment, but little by little, Claudia began to loosen her grip. She realized she could act with integrity, with kindness, without clinging to the need for approval. She started doing things because they aligned with her values, not because she was waiting for someone else's applause. And something incredible happened. The moment she stopped chasing outcomes, she felt lighter. The day she stopped putting everyone else before herself, she could finally breathe. And when she understood that the things outside of her control weren't worthy of her energy, her world slowly but powerfully changed. Her focus came back to the one person she'd forgotten to take care of, herself. So as Claudia learned to stop chasing what she couldn't control, she finally found peace returning to her. And you know what? That lesson isn't new. The Stoics saw this truth centuries ago, and they made it one of the cornerstones of their philosophy. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, explained it in the simplest, clearest way possible. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. That's it. That's the whole game. If you handle the things that are within your power, your choices, your actions, your attitude, and let the rest unfold however it will, your life transforms. Truly understanding this doesn't just tweak your mindset. It changes everything. It pulls you out of the endless noise, the exhausting habit of overthinking, the constant overdoing. You step away from the storm and into a calmer, quieter space, where you only focus on what depends on you, and you let go of the rest. And believe me when I tell you, that's where peace lives. It's not a myth. It's not a slogan on a coffee mug. It's real. And it comes the moment you stop clinging to what was never yours to control. Now don't get it twisted. This isn't about giving up. It's not about sitting back and letting life happen to you. It's about wisely redirecting your energy to the things you can actually shape. It's about knowing where your hands can reach and letting everything beyond that stay where it is. Because when you stop trying to predict every outcome, stop guessing what others are thinking, stop chasing answers to questions that don't need answers, your mind begins to relax, and with that relaxation comes something priceless. Clarity. Focus. The constant mental chatter softens. The anxious over-talking quiets down. You stop responding to your nerves, and you start moving with intention. Can you imagine how different life would feel if you made every decision, every action, from a place of calm focus instead of frantic worry? That kind of life isn't out of reach. It starts right here. If you want to build a life that feels lighter, clearer, and more grounded, you have to begin here, by letting go of what doesn't depend on you. And you don't need to wait until tomorrow. Do it now, right now. Stop refreshing your phone hoping for that text. Stop rewriting your words so no one gets offended. Stop justifying every choice like the world's approval is the prize you need to win. You're not here to chase things outside of your control. You're here to choose where to place your attention, your energy, and your time. And that, my friend, starts today. Now, number 10, speak less. Make a bigger impact. Let's be honest, you talk too much. And deep down, you know it. You feel it. You've lived it. You over-explain. You justify the obvious. You fill silences that never ask to be filled. And when you're done, you often catch yourself thinking, why did I say all that? It's not that you don't have valuable things to share. You do. But the problem is, you drown those valuable words in too much noise. And when everything's noise, nothing stands out. No one really listens because the world isn't hungry for more words. It's hungry for clarity, for intention, for words that land like a stone in still water, not like another drop in a storm. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus once said, "It bluntly, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we listen twice as much as we speak." And that isn't just some ancient quote you print on a poster. It's a strategy for life. The one who listens more understands more, and the one who truly understands needs to say less. Remember this. Your words aren't infinite. Neither is your credibility. Every time you speak just to fill the air, you lose a little bit of your strength. Every time you offer an opinion without really knowing, you shrink your presence. Every time you justify what's already clear, you scatter your focus. Speaking less doesn't make you distant. It makes you wise. It's a sign that you understand the true value of your voice, and that's exactly why you don't waste it. Because when you realize that every word you speak can either be a sharp, meaningful arrow or just empty noise, you start choosing your words differently. The Stoics understood this so deeply that they often chose silence, even when they knew they were right. Why? Because they knew. You don't need to prove anything with words if your actions already speak louder than you ever could. And so, as we learned before, when you learn to speak less and let your presence carry its own weight, you realize how powerful silence can truly be. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's focus. Now, picture this. Imagine a mountain. Massive, ancient, silent. It stands tall, unmoved, unaffected by the storms swirling around it. It doesn't shout to prove its strength. It doesn't need to announce its presence. Its very stillness is what makes it impossible to ignore. That's exactly what you should aim for. Be like that mountain. Let your calm in the middle of chaos speak volumes where others shout and still go unheard. This isn't just about carrying yourself with dignity or having some polished style. No. It's about focus. Because the more you talk, the more you drift. Every extra explanation drains a little more mental energy, pulls you a little further from clarity. And if there's one thing we're chasing on this path, it's clarity, it's strength, it's purpose. You see, speaking less isn't just about sounding wise, it's about being fully present. Because something powerful happens when you learn to stay quiet at exactly the right moment. Your words start to carry weight, real weight. And when you finally decide to speak, people listen. Not because you raised your voice, not because you dominated the room, but because you spoke from value, not from habit. And here's how you do it. First, only speak when what you're about to say has the power to change something. If your words won't improve the moment, if they won't add clarity, wisdom, or kindness, then let the silence do the work. Because sometimes silence can cut through noise sharper than any well-crafted sentence. Second, let your actions be your first and loudest language. Let the way you move, the way you work, the way you show up explain everything your words don't need to justify. There's a kind of honesty in consistent behavior that no verbal defense could ever match. Third, if you're ever unsure, should you speak or should you stay silent? Choose silence. Not because it's always the perfect answer, but because it's in that quiet space where the perfect answer might finally come to you. If you don't know what to say yet, it's not a flaw. It's a sign you're still processing. Respect that space. Let yourself think, because the one who listens to themselves before they speak, that person leaves a mark, a quiet, deliberate, unforgettable mark. Number 11. Learn to choose your battles. Listen, my friend. Like I told you earlier, not everything in this life deserves your response. And if you've understood that much, then it's time to take it even further. Because it's not just about staying quiet. It's about choosing. It's about deciding which situations truly deserve your energy, your attention, your words, and which simply don't. And I get it. This isn't easy. Most of us weren't trained for this. We were taught to react, taught to defend ourselves, to prove our point, to fight every little disagreement as if it somehow defined our worth. But let me tell you, living in fight mode all the time will drain you dry. It wears you out faster than you realize. Epictetus, in his timeless wisdom, put it so clearly it almost hurts. Don't be disturbed by what's outside your control. And inside that one simple idea lies the root of so many useless battles we keep fighting. We waste precious energy arguing against facts, against people's opinions, against words. We'll never be able to change, as if doing so would magically give us back some control. But here's a not-so-secret truth. Every time you waste your focus on these little battles, you're stealing from yourself. You're pulling focus away from the one thing you actually can improve. Your own mind, your own actions, your own peace. And you're not just losing focus. You're losing strength. You're losing calm. Now picture this. The most familiar modern scenario. You're stuck in traffic. You're already running late because, of course, your bed refused to let you leave this morning. Someone cuts you off without a glance. You slam on the brakes, and immediately, rage rises in your chest. You grip the wheel, flash your lights, mutter curses under your breath. The tension locks into your body, your mood drops. You arrive at your destination exhausted, angry, completely drained. Now, imagine the exact same situation. The traffic, the careless driver, the delay. But this time, you choose differently. You take a breath. You say to yourself, this battle isn't worth it. I choose to stay calm. You turn on a good song. You keep driving. And when you arrive, your peace is intact. Your energy is steady. Your head is clear. See the difference? Nothing on the outside changed. The world didn't suddenly become fair, but you changed. And that small, deliberate choice, that refusal to waste your strength on something you can't control, shifts the entire direction of your day. In the last part, we talked about the wisdom of choosing your battles, about understanding that not everything deserves your attention, your words, or your energy. And now, let's take that one step deeper. Sun Tzu, the legendary strategist behind the art of war, said it best. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Just pause on that for a moment. Think about it. The greatest military mind in history declared that the most powerful, most effective way to win isn't through battle. It's by avoiding it altogether. Not out of fear, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Because you see the bigger picture. Because you're in control, not of the outside world, but of yourself. And you can apply that exact same principle every time life tries to rattle you, every time a situation comes along and tries to yank you off balance. Because sometimes, believe it or not, the most powerful move you can make is to simply not step into the fight. To stand your ground without lifting a finger, and you know who else mastered this long before any modern guru or influencer preached it? The Stoics. They understood this truth on a level most of us today still struggle to grasp. They didn't waste their voice, their presence, or their energy on pointless arguments. They didn't feel the need to prove themselves in every room, every conversation, every disagreement. Their energy was too valuable to toss into the mud over empty words. But let's be clear, this isn't about running away. It's not about pretending things don't bother you. It's about wisdom, about knowing where to stand firm, where to speak up, and where to calmly say, this one isn't worth it. And if you start practicing this, if you begin to hold your peace more often than you hand it out, you'll feel it. Not just in your mind, but in your relationships, your choices, even your mental and physical health. You'll notice there's less burnout, less guilt, less reacting on impulse, and in its place you'll find more focus, more direction, more real strength, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. And if this sounds like something you might want to try, here's how you start. First, don't react on impulse. Slow down, breathe, observe before you act. Remember, sometimes silence is a response, and it's often the one people least expect, which makes it all the more powerful. Second, filter your battles. Ask yourself, will this fight bring me closer to the person I want to become? If the answer's no, then it's not your fight. Walk away. Hold your peace. Third, and this one's big, protect your peace over your pride, because sometimes letting go isn't weakness. It isn't defeat. It's growth. It's choosing your future self over your momentary ego. But here's the thing, my friend. While we spend so much time battling with others, there's one silent war most people keep losing every single day. And it's not fought with words. It's not about winning arguments or proving a point. It's a battle within, a quiet internal struggle, a fight for presence. And when you finally learn how to win that one, when you figure out how to master yourself before you try to master anything else, everything else begins to fall into place. So stay with me just a little longer, because I'm about to share one of the most important lessons you'll ever learn. A simple, powerful habit that most of us neglect. And it's not some complicated practice. It's about this, making time for yourself. Let's be honest for a second. Are you really giving yourself the time you deserve? Or are you just leaving yourself the scraps, the leftovers of the day after you've given everything else away? And no, I'm not talking about lying on your couch, mindlessly scrolling through your phone or zoning out in front of random videos. That's not rest. That's distraction. What I'm talking about is real time, intentional time, time with presence, Time where you sit with yourself, listen to your own mind, take care of your own heart. Time where you don't owe anyone an explanation and you don't need to check a box on a to-do list. Are you giving yourself that, or are you just surviving? Rushing from one task to the next, one conversation to another, one commitment stacked on top of the other. Never stopping long enough to ask yourself how you even feel. When was the last time you went for a walk, with no destination? Wrote down what was weighing on your mind? Stared out of a window, not in a hurry but just to be still? Gave yourself an hour without a screen in front of you? Did something you love, not because it was productive, but because it made you feel alive? That is making time for yourself. And let me tell you, not doing it comes at a cost you might not even realize you're paying. Because when you live your life constantly facing outward, for everyone else, for every deadline, for every demand, and never turn inward, you drain yourself, little by little. And the worst part is you probably won't notice it happening. You'll just feel it. A little more irritable, a little more exhausted, a little more disconnected from everything around you. But it's not your body that's tired. It's your spirit. It's your connection to yourself that's been frayed, stretched thin by neglect. Look at your days. They start in a rush. They end in exhaustion. You answer calls. You meet people's needs. You handle every little thing. But what about you? Where are you in the middle of all that noise? And the sad irony is, most people only remember to take care of themselves when they finally break down. We just talked about how most people only remember to care for themselves when everything falls apart. When exhaustion hits like a brick wall and suddenly it's too late. Now, let's dive deeper into why this happens. And more importantly, how you can change it. The truth is, you tend to give yourself a break only when you've already slammed headfirst into your limits. As if you need to collapse, to completely run out of fuel before you're finally allowed to whisper, "I need a moment." Sound familiar? You're not alone, and psychology backs this up. Kristen Neff, one of the leading voices in the field of self-compassion, puts it plainly. We can't give to others what we haven't cultivated within ourselves. Think about that for a second. If you're not actively nurturing peace, clarity, presence, or a sense of purpose inside of you, then what exactly do you think you're offering to the people around you? Stress? Frustration? Empty words? Even Steve Jobs, the man behind one of the most demanding, high-pressure companies in the world, understood this on a personal level. He guarded time for himself as fiercely as he guarded his boldest ideas. He once shared that his best decisions, his sharpest insights, didn't come in the middle of a meeting or while chasing deadlines. They came during moments of pause. Because, here's the thing, focus doesn't rise out of chaos. It's born in silence. It's shaped when you're alone with your thoughts, not when you're tangled up in 100 distractions. And here's a simple but essential truth. You can't live with intention if you never spend any meaningful time with yourself. It's like trying to drive a car without ever glancing at the dashboard. Sure, you'll keep moving for a while. The wheels will turn, the scenery will blur by. But eventually, you'll run out of gas. And when that happens, when you run out of yourself, there's nothing left to give. Not to your work, not to your loved ones, not to your future. Making time for yourself isn't about escaping the world, about hiding from responsibilities or avoiding what needs to be done. It's about returning to yourself. It's about reconnecting with your center so that you can return to the world stronger, clearer, and more steady than before. But how do you even begin? How do you carve out a slice of peace for yourself when life keeps pulling at you from every direction. Here's a simple starting point. Create one moment in the day that's yours. Just one. A moment without guilt, without excuses. A space that belongs to no one else. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. And be careful with that time. Don't let it turn into mindless distraction. No endless scrolling. No getting lost in someone else's drama. No gossip. None of that noise. Use that moment to do something that brings you back to the present. Write a few thoughts down. Go for a walk without a destination. Take 5 deep, intentional breaths. Read something nourishing, or simply sit in silence. No agenda, no performance. Just be. And here's a lesson worth engraving in your mind. Don't wait until you've hit your limit to take care of yourself. Don't wait until you're worn down, frayed at the edges, and barely hanging on. Care for yourself while you're still okay, while you still have energy, while you still feel steady. Because that's how you stay okay. That's how you build resilience before you need it. Because in the end, the focus, the calm, and the strength you're searching for, they don't appear when you do more. They reveal themselves when you finally choose yourself. When you stop running from your own presence and start embracing it. And remember, living with intention doesn't mean you have to get everything right. It doesn't mean being perfect or never making mistakes. It means making clear, conscious choices about where your energy goes, about what matters, about what's worth your attention and what isn't. Each of these ideas I've shared with you today, they aren't just feel-good quotes or pretty concepts. They're tools. And when you start applying them, your life will begin to shift. You'll step out of autopilot. You'll stop just reacting and start choosing. Choosing a life that feels a little more conscious, a little more your own, because, and I want you to hear this, you don't need to control everything to feel at peace. You just need to remember one thing. You always have a choice in how you respond, in what you chase, in what you release. And hey, if you've made it this far with me, I want you to do something. Drop this in the comments. Today, I'll think less, talk less, and take better care of myself. That way, I'll know who the true Stoic warriors are who made it all the way to the end. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and give this video a like so you don't miss out on what's coming next. I also invite you to check out the playlist you'll see right here on the screen. It's packed with ideas, stories, and Stoic scrolls to help you navigate life with clarity, strength, and calm. Click it, and let's keep moving forward together. Until next time, take care of yourself, and keep embracing your inner Stoic.